Hello, welcome to today's episode of Postcards for Parents Office Hours. I'm Kate Howe, I'm the co-founder of Postcards for Parents, and I'm here with Dr. John Stewart. Hi, John.
Hi, Kate. It's always good to be with you, and I am thrilled to be associated with this noble project that you call Postcards for Parents as one of your clinical directors. So.
Yeah. Well, we have a very helpful and practical topic to talk about today, which is how can we get our kids to take over more of their kind of routine management, and how that kind of progresses as they get older. So, an example might be getting ready for bed at night, or getting changed after sports practice, or feeding the cat, etc. So when our kids are little, we do all that stuff by default. And then I think, parents get used to it, and our kids grow up and they get used to us doing it too. But there's probably a lot of stuff that we could pass off earlier than many parents do. Maybe that's also depending on the culture of the family. And it turns out to be good for both the parents and the kids. So I want to talk about, how do you know what's the right thing? What are the right things to pass off at each age? What's the process for kind of making that be successful? And then how can you also kind of maintain connection even after you're not doing so much for your child, not to lose that piece of it.
Yeah. Those are all great questions, Kate.
Cool.
There's complexity in them and simplicity, as in most things.
Yeah, so I'd like to just talk a little bit about, or I'd love to hear from you about this brain function, the brain capacity that we call executive function. Can you talk about how that develops over time? What's kind of going on with kids at each age, and kind of what is it like? Why is it useful in life?
Yeah, that part of the brain that is associated with executive functions is primarily thought about as the medial frontal cortex. It's involved in all kinds of things. We think about it as being involved in organization above all things, but organization has a lot of different pieces to it. Even the organization of being able to discern whether or not something's happening within me versus outside of me. It's, the organization of being able to discern a shift in my internal state so that I get a warning that, I'm beginning to move in this direction. It's organization in terms of where my things are. Where did I leave my school book, or in my case, where did I leave my keys, my glasses, or one of the many other things that I spend my day looking for. Executive functions are they go across there a number of different things. Its ability to split attention, to have 95% of your attention on one thing and 5% still aware of the time or aware of what's going on around you. It's associated with relating new learning to old learning, sequential memory. There's a whole bunch of things. Organization with respect to, as I said before, even organization with respect to the understanding of the dynamics of relationships and the dynamics of the internal state, the internal emotions. So, yeah, they're big. And so, how do you promote that development in youngsters? Well, there's an adage in neuroscience. It says, neurons that fire together wire together, which means that what we want is for our kids to have repeated experiences that allow neurochannels of practice and expectation to begin to evolve in their brains. Well, we also know that there are some things that get in the way of that. We may be living in a highly structured environment that has lots of opportunity for sameness, but if it is a relatively rigid, critical environment, we know that creates anxiety, and anxiety undermines cognitive efficiency in the development of those neurochannels. We also know...
Just say that in a little bit more plain language.
That when kids are anxious, they learn less effectively, less efficiently. Bruce Perry talks about, he's done these studies looking at information coming in and how much of it makes its way to the upper brain in anxious or agitated kids. And it's like 20% of what makes the brain in a calm kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no question that readiness to learn, whether that's readiness to learn that you hang up your jacket, you put your boots, in the closet, and you bring your lunch pail upstairs and open it up. That's learning. Readiness to learn that is facilitated by being in a state of emotional quiet that says, okay, all right, this is what I'm doing. So I learn it. That facilitates. The other thing that facilitates learning is repetition. There's no question. So if I can approach this task of teaching my kids some of the rituals and routines that I want them to have, and I can do it with a gentle and calm spirit, and I can do it consistently, they're going to get it. They will get it. And some kids will get it faster than others because they're wired differently, one from the next. But that's how you get it. It's those two things together. You can then add one other piece, which is kind of multi-sensory input. Okay. That would be something like a visual narrative, like making with them a little poster that has a picture of their jacket hooked up and a little having fun with it, a little picture of a little stick person hanging up their jacket. Then below that, number 2, their boots put away, and 3 up there, and they've got a picture of mom smiling because, they've brought their lunch bucket up and it doesn't have 2 months worth of old food in it. So you can have some multi-sensory things. Multi-sensory meaning that it could be a visual, it could be a story that you tell, it could be a song that you make up with them. We know that the more and varied the avenue of kind of creating within kids a neurochannel of learning, the more likely it is to get established and hold.
Okay, so I heard a couple things there, and one that sort of seems especially salient. So repetition, it seems normal. Like we do the same thing every day. You come in, you hang up your jacket, you bring your lunch to the kitchen. But maybe what we don't always do every day, is particularly in stress situations like getting out the door in the morning or when we're running behind, is have that kind of calm warmth and playfulness, right? So it's either teach in a when you're not stressed out, or just provide a lot of time for that routine so you don't get stressed out, and you'll have a much better chance of getting through.
And having it become a routine so that it's much less stressful. You kind of either you pay up front with a little bit of time and energy, or you pay long term with repeated experiences of the same kind of struggle.
This wasn't really on my script, John, but my question is, what if the parent is having a hard time, doing that routine? How can we teach ourselves to have that enough time that we need in the morning?
Great. Is that not the question? Particularly if you think about kids who have a little weaker executive function, there's some aspect of genetically based neurology that plays into kids having a little more, a little less strength in that area. And so if you have a mom or a dad who's not great in that, either because of neurology or because their life is so packed full and so stressful, it is hard to do exactly what I just said to do. It's really easy to say it, but to recognize that you have to do it really consistently, at least for a while, it's hard. And I think that it falls back into that broad category of conscious parenting. We have our behavior is governed by one of two things. It's either our kind of lower brain, which is responding with all the stuff of emotion, and that's all good and important stuff. I'm not dismissing that. Or our upper brain. And we have the ability by choice, as long as we remember to have this choice. You might want to make a chart for yourself that's on the refrigerator that shows you taking 3 deep breaths and then gently calling the kids to say, "Hey guys, it's time to get ready to go to school or bed." That's the same things apply to us that apply to them. And the more you're able to be gentle with yourself, the more you're able to repeatedly see that pattern, and that's what I do. So it's conscious parenting. It's making the decision to just do what it is that I know is effective. Now, the dilemma is that we often tell ourselves, and this is unfortunate, that it shouldn't be that hard. My kids shouldn't do that. My parents didn't do that with me, or what, and it's like, well, maybe, I don't know. Anytime somebody says something shouldn't be that hard, it usually means that they just don't understand how inherently hard what they're trying to do is.
Well, that's nice. So you're kind of not giving it enough weight in terms of its complexity and importance. So then you kind of minimize it. So, but I want to ask then a little bit more of those details, like how long should we expect it to take, this kind of practice period before it does, with the pay up front? Like, what is that?
You're going to love this answer, Kate. This
What?
is the answer. You're going to love this answer. This is the answer that we psychologists hide behind the majority of the time. And it is as long as it takes.
Okay.
And different kids, it's going to take different lengths of time. Different kids, some kids are going to be able to have a little inconsistency and go, all right, this still falls in that place. Other kids are not. Let me say one other thing that's kind of interesting about executive function. Those kids who are really good at it, that's great. A lot of the world is going to seem it's going to be easier for them. Those kids who that's a little harder for, I don't like to think about that as a disability. It's a different kind of brain. And some of the research on creativity has shown this fascinating in neuroimaging, that in the creative process, there's the transient, now that's the dilemma, it's transient, shutting down of the medial prefrontal cortex. That creativity does not come out of that part of the brain. So you oftentimes find those kids who are not great at kind of putting the pieces together one after the other and doing it in the secret. Oftentimes those kids have these kind of crystalline observations or perspectives that are beautiful, but it doesn't mean that that are creative, really. Because what happens if you have really good executive functioning, everything comes in and fits into a category. It goes here, here, here. Everything comes in and fits in nicely. If you don't have that, things come in and somehow they might fit over here. Well, fitting over here may give you a different perspective on that thing than where most people see it fitting in. And that different perspective might prove to be really transformative in some way. So important to not lament too much that your kid can't put his, bring his lunch pail up, because that is an asset. And it's not being irresponsible. There are brains that do this really easily and brains that don't. Some brains need a lot of help in getting those patterns established.
So what you're saying is it's not a myth, that kind of stereotype of the like disorganized artist or the kind of creative type who's just running around with their head in the
absent-minded professor. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so how much of that though is like a innate way that your brain works, and how much of it is either more or less practice as you're growing up?
I think it's both. I mean, I think it's. I don't have any doubt that it's both. I mean, when kids learn that they know, when they learn about themselves that they have to do it this way to be able to make it go well, and that's oftentimes in high school. Kids who've just been kind of, and now there's a lot more coming at them, and some of those kids with weaker executive functioning learn that their desk has to be straight, their backpack has to be, and as soon as it's off the mark, it all goes to hell. It is, so there's no question that kids who grew up in environments that are inherently pretty organized, where there are bedtimes and there are fundamental meal times, there's some clarity about, those kids are much more likely to experience the world as not governed by randomness, and that drops anxiety. And they're much more likely to develop those neural channels of looking for and seeing patterns.
So I was going to ask about that. So having the organization, time management, these executive function skills help reduce anxiety. Is that's what you're saying? That's
correct, because those oftentimes allow you to experience the world as predictable, because you've seen the patterns, and you and it is an environment that is experienced as both perilous and unpredictable. That is the perfect storm for anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's peril out there, and I'm not sure when it's going to come from where. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the dynamics of alcoholism or parental mental illness, or those are some of the things that create for kids this not quite knowing what to expect. You put that together with not feeling competent and being able to predict it, and that outcome is negative rather with not being able to predict it, is that has a real impact on emotional security and really the avoidance of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So I guess I have another question about, you talked about like learning a routine, I guess, and learning an executive function the same way that you might learn math or reading, that you need this kind of calm, warm environment to do that learning. But executive function skills are a different type of skill than kind of, addition or reading. Is that
they are and they're not.
Okay.
In some respects, they're very similar. Now, I mean, there are ways in which they're different. An academic task is different from a higher level cognitive task, but they're both tasks that you got to figure out how to do. So I would say they're more similar. And, that's one of the things that I think, oh God, I'm blocking on his name. The guy who did The Explosive Child and collaborative problem solving, he's blocking on his name. But here's one of his central message was that the dilemma that kids have is lacking skills. It's not that they're not trying their best, because clearly they were trying their best. Kids try their best, but their best oftentimes doesn't mesh well with what the expectations or the need of the situation are. But when you think about kids who are showing behavioral problems as lacking skills, you move away from a punitive stance and you move into kind of structuring and helping them, because kids who lack skills but have to do something in an area where they don't have skill, they're anxious. So you try to quiet their spirits, and then you try to do scaffolding to help them develop the skill that they have. It is a skill to realize that you got to hang up your jacket, put your boots in the closet, and take your lunch pail to mom. That is a skill, And if you don't have that skill, then you need help in developing it. And punishment does not teach things.
Right.
I don't speak Latin. And if you offered me $1 million to say the Pledge of Allegiance in Latin, or you said, I'm going to cut off your left hand if you don't, I am not going to be able to say the Pledge of Allegiance in Latin.
I am extremely stressed and agitated, that you are not doing that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So what can we reasonably expect kids to do at different ages in this area? Like, how does it develop?
It is different. I mean, it is different for different kids and the nature of the culture that they've grown up in. If they've grown up in a highly structured and gentle culture, then they're likely to develop that stuff pretty quickly. If they've grown up in a chaotic but gentle culture, not so quickly. If they've grown up in a really punitive and gentle culture, they may develop it, but they also develop an anxiety disorder.
You mean a punitive and structured culture?
That's a little harsh, but so it's going to be different. Different kids are going to do it different ways. Different genders tend to do it a little differently. I think that the main thing is that you use your empathic attunement to your kid to know whether or not they've got it figured out. And if they don't have it figured out, to not attribute that to their being oppositional or their God, if I could do one thing with our language in mental health, it would be to get rid of the oppositional defiant diagnosis, because it's as if that is a choice, it's as if that is who they are. But what they're lacking is the skill to know how to manage a particular situation. And parents will oftentimes say, well, he did it that time, so obviously when he doesn't do it, it's because he's trying to be oppositional. I think that it's different for different kids at different age. You use your empathic attunement, and then whenever you can, when you look at it as a lacking skill, then that is a big step forward. A kid's doing the best he knows how, wish I could remember this guy's name. The best a kid's doing the best he knows how, and what he's not able to do is a lacking skill. And then I need to help with that.
And so would you recommend just kind of looking at your day, your family's day, and wondering like where it's kind of feeling stressful or pinched and working on some skills in those areas?
Absolutely. Pick a place, pick a time, pick it's bedtime, it's bath time, it's going to school time, whatever. Pick an arena where you're going to give yourself the chance to say, all right, I'm really going to be conscious as I deal with this, and stick with it until the pattern begins to get established, until it's going better. And the thing is, even if it doesn't go better and your kid leaves and they still forgot their backpack and they had to come back into the house again, even if they do that, but that goodbye ends on a sweet, loving note that just says the poor little thing doesn't have that skill yet, well, then you feel good about it. So this is a win-win situation. And I think that kids want to please their parents. They want to have things go well. And so I think that it's a great idea to pick a part of your life where you're going to use this consistency, this gentleness, the idea of the padded boundary. We've talked about that before. Boundary is firm, but it's padded. You don't say get your elbows off the table. You say, buddy, remember, oh goodness, look, where are the elbows?
And play.
You playfully do it, or you gently do it in a way that makes the boundary not something that you collide into, and then you have your own emotional reaction, which actually undermines learning.
Yeah, and I feel like the way that it's gone in our house is we'll have a stressful point in the schedule, and we'll kind of do a kerfuffle about trying to do it differently, and we'll practice it for a while, and then maybe not until it's perfect, but it's a little bit better and it's not so stressful. And then sort of sometimes a couple months later, I'm like, oh, my kids they bring their plates to the sink every time or whatever. Like it feels difficult at the beginning, but then it sort of just melts into part of the status quo. So
yeah, that's exactly what you want to have happen. And I think it does happen when you bring consistency and gentleness to the process of taking a child to a new skill level. Because one of the things, a skill level is all, there's skill involved in a child hearing a directive that they don't want to do and being able to manage it. That's a skill. Right. And I'm still working on that one.
Well, yeah. And also reshaping their worldview to think that is part of their responsibility instead of part of the parent's responsibility. I mean, we work on that with cleaning up, I mean, it's always funner for all of us, including the parents, to play into the last minute and read books into the last minute. And then we go, oh, but the room is full of toys, and there's just, in reality, we have shaped the expectation that that's not part of their responsibility. So it like working that into, yes, that is what you as a member of this family have to do. What you just said, they react against it at the beginning, but then I feel like it gradually widens their perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think parents often try to talk their kids, use rationality as a way to talk their kids into believing that this is a good idea and it's fair for you. And that's okay. It's not to say that isn't a part of the dynamic, but that's not really going to have the power of just the clear expectation done with gentleness.
Interesting. Yeah. So in that sense, you don't even have to like blah, 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 blah. Just
here's what we do.
Start the new routine. So one thing I think is important is when kids are little, doing things for them can be really, it can be stressful and it is a lot of work, but it can also be these nice points of connection, like if you're brushing your child's teeth, or you are kind of cleaning up with them after they play, or you're helping them get dressed or whatever. And as they become more independent, that's a loss of that kind of connection. And I think that might be a reason why both kids and parents resist kind of taking this over. So how do you think about maintaining the connection while not doing as much for them?
Yeah, I think it's a good observation. I think there are two ways in which the connection gets affirmed, and probably a lot more than that. But two that come to mind right now as we sit here. One is through touch. And clearly touching a child, helping them put their jacket on, zip up their jacket, helping them brush their teeth. Those are very sweet. That is. And as they become more autonomous, there is some loss of that. And I think that's a fact. And you may want to be conscious of that. The people at the Theraplay Institute, they talk about, bedtime rituals that might have something like, putting oil on the youngster's hand, give them a little hand massage, and paying attention to the freckles and looking at them and counting, just little routines that include touch, because touch does become a little less. The other thing is observant presence. They're feeling like they're being seen. So when they brush their teeth, going in and going, oh my goodness, look at that. You're doing that. Let them see that you celebrate their movement towards autonomy, and then pull them over and give them a squeeze. So it's not like they're autonomous. So now we don't need to celebrate that. And it may be that it's been a year since you've given them a hug for brushing their teeth, but maybe every once in a while you go, you know what? I realized you do that all on your own. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so thankful for this. And they look at you like, what? That's
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And also, I think just like being aware if you are giving up connection through something that you've been doing, maybe if you're not brushing their teeth, there's more time to sit and read books together side by side, or, something like that.
Absolutely. Sometimes it means that we may shift. With little ones, we spend a whole lot of time doing, this and that. With infants, we spend a lot of time being. Just kind of, we're just there, and they're there, and we're feeding them, and that's it. But as they get older, we end up doing a lot more time doing. Mm-hmm. And being with a child is such an important thing. Laying down with them and looking at the ceiling before you put them to bed, or just sitting down on the floor and watching them build with their Legos, or whatever it is. The being is so important. So with the loss of the doing, just maybe want to be conscious about making certain that we're as present, maybe present a little more in some ways.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So my last question is just to talk a little bit more, there's the executive function, but then there's also maybe the sense of control that comes with a child, like knowing what the steps are before they have to get out the door, or sort of feeling more able to make themselves breakfast or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So how does that how should parents think about these life skills as like actually things that kids benefit from, or what are the benefits for kids?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question. And some kids symbolically are going to hold on to some things, and you'll decide whether this is when I have a parent with a 14-year-old who sits and waits for breakfast every morning, and even if it means pouring the bowl of cereal. But I think this parent has very accurately discerned that this is just a little symbolic thing that starts the day off well for this kid, and that you don't need to rush this. Kids are pulled towards autonomy. They want to be competent. They want to do things on their own. And they also want and need the sense that they're being supported, that they're being held up by attentive and loving parents. So I don't think we have to worry too much about whether or not kids will move towards autonomy. They will. I think if they see us as struggling with that, if they see us as sad about it, if they see us as in some way, just lamenting their movement, That's not great. I think it's okay to say, oh, sweetie, it's so good to see you. You're doing all that. And I give them a hug and you say, oh, I'm so proud of you. And you've got to be doing it. It's all the right thing, and it's sometimes hard for mom to see you grow up, but I know that's what you got to do, to be transparent and kind of light and playful about that stuff. Name it sometimes. That's one of Siegel's saying, name it to tame it. Just give it a word. Yeah, mom's a little neurotic and hard to watch this sweet little guy grow up. I think I've told you before, one of the things, my wife with our grandkids tends to be on the safety patrol, and she's very, very careful about, we'll go places and my 7-year-old's son is just climbing all over the rocks. We live in Maine, and so there's lots of places to go like that. And it drives him crazy that his grandma is always telling him, be careful, be careful. I don't know if you should go up there. It's just the way she loves him. And, that's just the nature. So he has learned to think about his grandma in a very loving, a little bit neurotic way. And so his response to her is now, thank you for loving me, Mimi, but I'm okay. And so I think sometimes just naming it, all right, that comes out of love. It may not be what I have to attend to, but it's those kinds of things. By naming it in some way, we go, all right, we got it. We see this is how it works.
What if it's a child who is sort of saying, oh, I don't want to grow up, or
a child who's not ambivalent about growing up is either the firstborn, which is often the case, or the firstborn is a child who's not paying attention to the joys of not having to grow up. Kids should be ambivalent about growing up. Now, some of them will block it. Firstborns in particular are likely to, they want to move through this. And because there's a part of it that with each stage that they move through, they reduce their parents' anxiety. They go, oh my goodness, we got through that. The later kids, I often think about the firstborn as being like the icebreaker in the channel. They come, they fight their way through with parents, and the ones that follow, it's a little easier for them. It's more comfortable for them to embrace their ambivalence about growing up, to act it out. So, there are a lot of reasons why firstborns are a little more in that one. And then not all of them. Some of them, for a lot of different reasons, are not. So nothing you say about development or about strategies is universal. These are just places to just think. It's a framework in which to think about.
But so you're saying so kids do have a drive towards independence and competence, but still kind of want to be taken care of, or still kind of want to be part of the
Absolutely. Why wouldn't they? I sometimes talk about families, particularly good, loving families, as being like a yacht, and the kids are growing up on the yacht, but they begin to realize that the yacht's sinking. They can't stay on this yacht forever. And they got to look out there, look for lifeboats that they can climb into with other kids. And with, there's lots of, so the ambivalence about, I don't want to leave the yacht. How could you want to leave the yacht? No, of course you don't. And to give words to that of course you want to go off and do all this big stuff and have fun with it. And also you really, it's hard to go do that. So you express ambivalence. Ambivalence is a huge part of our emotional response to growing up. Just name it. Let it be. It's possible to hold two opposite feelings at the same time. As a matter of fact, in some respects, emotional health is associated with the ability to hold two distinct feelings at the same time.
Good to know. Note that in my little.
I'm working on it, Kate.
Oh, I'm good at that. I'm always ambivalent.
I know that about you, and I love that about you. Your questions are always like this side and then that side. It's perfect.
All right, cool. Well, those are all my questions. Any other parting thoughts or tips on how to kind of help kids with this transition towards schedule, time management, routine, and the fabulous world of executive function?
Yeah, closing notes or be gentle with yourself. You're not going to be able to be, teachers, they create that kind of structure. It's so much easier to do that in a work setting than it is at home. Be gentle with, pick a few places where you're really going to work on it, or one place, and be gentle with them and recognize that, more often than not, what you're dealing with is a lacking skill.
Yeah. And it always helps me to remember that it's a learned skill. It's not like an innate thing that they should know. It's just practice. And even sometimes just explain.
Very little that's innate.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much for these pearls of wisdom today. And I will look forward to more next week on a new topic.
All right. Thanks, Kate. Take good care.
Thanks, John.